Today, we're announcing a 3-year plan to guide our recovery and take us through to the better days ahead. It's a plan that I have agreed to stay on as Group CEO to see through. The plan has 3 immediate actions to safeguard the national carrier's future and the majority of the jobs that it supports. The first is to right-size our workforce, our fleet, our capital spending for a world that has less flying for an extended period. The second is to restructure to deliver ongoing savings across the group operations in a changed market. And the third is recapitalising through an equity raise that will strengthen our balance sheet and accelerate our recovery. The actions that we're taking will have a huge impact on thousands of our people. This is something that weighs very heavily on all of us. This is something that we don't make a decision on very easily. But the collapse of billions of dollars in revenue leaves us with little choice if we are to save as many jobs as possible longer term. Many of the 6,000 job losses we've announced today are people who have spent decades here. They're people we know personally. They are people that we know for a long time. And it is not unusual to have several members of one family working at Qantas and at Jetstar. What makes this even harder is right before this crisis hit, we were actively recruiting. We were gearing up for Project Sunrise. We were getting ready to take delivery of new aircraft, 787s and A320neos. Now we're facing a sudden reversal of fortune that is no one's fault, but it's very hard to accept. Across the world, airlines are shrinking by up to 50%. To avoid anything of this scale, we will be extending the stand down for a large number of our people as we wait for the recovery we know will be coming. Separate to the 6,000 job losses, about 15,000 people will remain stood down for some time. People from whom we have no work, but we will have work for them in the future. Around half of those stood down will be back flying domestically, we think, by the end of this calendar year. The remainder, mostly those supporting international flying, will return to work more slowly. Thousands of Qantas and Jetstar people have already found secondary employment during their stand-down periods. And I'm literally getting feedback from their employers every other day about how positive they have and the contribution they've added to those businesses. We know our people are incredibly sought after. We know our people do an incredible job. And for many of our people on stand down, JobKeeper has made all the difference. We have had good discussions with the government about possibly extending JobKeeper or some other form of support for those in the aviation industry who will be stood down for an extended period. And I had a conversation with the Prime Minister and the Treasurer last night about that exact issue. We're also in dialogue with state and territory governments about their borders openings, because once that happens, we can get more of our people back to work. We will do the best we can to manage the impact on those leaving the organisation and those continuing to stand down. We'll first of all be offering voluntary redundancy rather than compulsory redundancies as much as possible. We'll give support for career transitions, and for those stood downs, we'll give ongoing access to long service and annual leave, as well as all of our welfare programs. We will consult with the relevant unions over the coming days and weeks. And I think these unions are well aware of the challenges facing the industry, and I hope that they're ready to work with us to make the implementation of this as best and as efficient and focused on our people as possible. As I mentioned, the Qantas Group has extremely bright prospects for recovery. And the faster we recover, the sooner most of our people can get back to work. To help with this, we've announced an equity raising for the first time in a decade, which follows a long period of returning significant capital to our shareholders. The proceeds from this raising, up to $1.9 billion, will strengthen our balance sheet and accelerate our recovery. And once we have recovered, this capital will help us take advantage of opportunities that emerge. There is a lot of details on the equity raising in the press releases that we have issued today, so please refer to them for the details of how that's going to work. This year was supposed to be one of a celebration for Qantas. It is our centenary. We're the oldest continuous operating airline on the globe. And clearly, this is not turning out as planned. Though we do draw strength from our long history, we know that no matter how tough it is in the moment, we've always come back from a crisis stronger than before. And we draw strength from our beginnings, because Qantas was founded in 1920 in turbulent times, straight after the First World War and a devastating pandemic, the Spanish flu. So our centenary perhaps is a new beginning, the start of our next century. And while we have to make some painful decisions, we have to focus on that future. We know that flying will return, our people will be back in the skies, no aircraft will sit idle, and new ones will be arriving, including new ones for ultra-long-haul destinations. We're confident because we've been in tough spots before. In 2013, Qantas faced an uphill battle. The turnaround that followed set us up for years of growth and was only derailed by COVID-19. We know this new plan gets us back on track, back to growth, back to profit, and back to pushing boundaries like things like Project Sunrise. In closing, I want to recognise our people, their dedication to the national carrier, even during this time of great upheaval and uncertainty. They are a big part of what will carry us through this crisis. I also want to recognise our customers. Throughout all the recent turbulence, their support and loyalty has been truly amazing. From emails I've received through notes written on napkins sent to our crew to give them support through this period. Our commitment to you, our customers, is unchanged. Millions want to see people in places that they love, and they need an airline to take them there, particularly in the country the size of Australia. We will be smaller for a period of time, but we will still deliver an amazingly high level of care and service, and above all, safety. We continue to serve regional communities and support Australian tourism. And as the national carrier, we have a very important job to do, a proud history to uphold, and a bright future to look forward to. Thank you, and we may open it to questions.
Alan, we'll take some questions in the room first, and then we'll go to the phones.
Okay.
You have a 3-year plan, but to get to that 3-year escape clause, basically, do you think this is it? You need to cut any further? Are you satisfied that what you're doing today will satisfy what you need to do for the next 3 years?
Well, David, we put our best forecast of what we think will happen into the future, and we believe it's a realistic plan about domestic recovery, and we're very optimistic about domestic. The domestic market will get back to maybe 70% of pre-COVID levels in the next year, and the following year to 100%. We think international will take a long time. Only there'll be nothing this next financial year, and July next year we may start seeing some international services, and that will only get us to 50%. The following year, only 2/3 of the pre-COVID international schedule. So given that, we put this plan together. We believe that's a realistic plan, and these are the only job losses that are needed. The issue for us will not be further job losses, but how long people are stood down. Our best guess is that we have 8,000 people working today. We will stand up to 15,000 by the end of the calendar year if the borders open and domestic tourism is flying again. It will still take us to the middle of 2022 to stand up 21,000 people back in employment. Any variation, second waves, could delay those stand-ups, but don't diminish our need for those jobs. And we think those jobs are needed for the group into the future. And I think our plan is I think, very realistic, and I'm hoping there won't be any further stand-downs from the dates that we're explaining today.
The equity raising that you're doing is significant, but who knows how long this, I know you've done all the modelling, but who knows how long this might go on for. Would you be asking for any government assistance like Virgin has? I mean, I know in the past you said that that's not something you do, but it's a pretty bad situation.
So our prime objective is to look after our own shop and making sure we're fit to manage our way through this and grow when we come through. So even before the equity raising, we said with the hard work our teams have done, we had gotten our cash burn down to $40 million a week. That's still a lot of money, but compared to the rest of the airlines around the world, it's probably one of the lowest given our size. That gave us, with the debt we raised, because we had raised debt on aircraft we bought with cash over these very strong last 5 financial years. That gave us enough runway to get to the end of 21 with no borders opening and the current environment in place. With the equity raise today, this gets us well through 22 into 23. I don't think anybody's forecasting that this will continue. We have other bigger problems if this continues well into that period of time. So our view has to be look after our own shop, get our own shop in order, and make sure we get that right. Where the government assistance, which has been invaluable, has come in, is in a number of areas, and they have given us significant assistance for our people. JobKeeper, we've received over $400 million in JobKeeper support or will. That goes directly to the people that are stood down. I think that's been a great programme, and we've said to the government, given that our industry is going to take a longer time to recover, the tourism industry is going to take a longer time to recover, can we have some form of mechanism similar to that? Does not be exactly the same to help? And that's where we'd like the government support to the individuals. And I think the government has done a great job on that. The other support we've gotten, and we have gotten support to operate while there was really no travel, a minimal viable network. That meant we were kept the country in contact. We allow people to travel for medical reasons and other reasons. And of course, we couldn't lose any more money on doing that, given how sensitive our liquidity was. And the government supported that for a number of months, continues to support it on regional communities. And I think that's a straight pass-through of our costs to them. But they're the support. I think the whole industry has been given. Virgin have been given it, Rex have been given it. And that's where we'd like the government to continue that support.
One more if I could. You've got 6,000 people. Do you know who they are? Have you decided who's going to go? Have they been told yet? How will that process work? And is it more international than domestic? Flight attendants, people we see, we get on a plane, crew, who are you looking at?
So we're looking at, and we obviously from today will start to consult with our unions, and also we'll be speaking to our employee work groups across the company. It will be a combination of cabin crew, engineering, ground services teams, and also corporate teams as well. So I think that it will be felt right across all work groups at Qantas. Because the international is stood down for longer than the domestic, The ongoing stand down will impact international workforces more significantly. So I think that the most important thing that we're going to be doing today is spending a lot of time talking with those groups. We've got frontline leaders that will be out there. We've been holding webinars since the beginning of the pandemic. We've had up to three webinars, company-wide webinars a week. And we're continuing to do that. So we recognise that uncertainty is going to be the thing that we want to bring to those work groups and those individuals, and certainty as quickly as we can.
And Damien, we have an obligation to inform the ASX of the significant changes we're making, and then we go into consultation with the unions, which will be happening from today. And the numbers, we give a breakdown of them. There's around 1,500 of non-operational roles, i.e. head office and management roles, that are part of this reduction. It's nearly a 30% reduction in our head office and management in the company. It's in ground ops, the people that load the aircraft, 1,500 people. In cabin crew, 1,000 people. In engineering, 630 jobs, and in pilots, 220 jobs associated with the removal of the 747s, essentially, which won't come back into service and won't be replaced. We haven't picked or can't pick the individuals because we have to go through a voluntary redundancy, and we don't know if people will want to be get voluntary redundancy. We think there'll be a lot of, in certain groups, there'll be a lot of interest in that, and then once we've exhausted that, we go to compulsory redundancies. So that's why the names are not picked, and that'll take us a few months to get through that.
We've got the finance questions.
Yes, of course. Questions on the phones? First question. Technology may not be working, is it?
Pardon me, your first question comes from Patrick Hatch from the Sydney Morning Herald. Please go ahead.
Hey, Patrick.
G'day, Alan. Alan, back in May, you more or less ruled out needing an equity raising because you had aircraft you could borrow against and liquidity that could see you through to the end of next year. So could you just talk a bit about what's changed between then and now?
Yeah, I'll say a few words and then I'll get Vanessa. Obviously, things have evolved a lot, and one of the things that we've been working on since May is what the size and shape of Qantas looks like into the future. And when we looked at that, we figured that there was an opportunity to really accelerate that transformation, to get us in a better shape, to be able to order the aircraft for Project Sunrise, to expand again and allow the airline to have really strong, robust strength to get through whatever happens into the future. The restructuring of the business we announced today will cost up to $1 billion. We could have avoided or delayed doing that over a period of time, but we didn't think that was in the interest of the company or interest of our people, and giving them certainty was really key, and the acceleration and the fast implementation of that restructuring program, this equity raise allows us to do, and allows to get the business back to the financial strength that it had before COVID-19.
Yeah, and just to add what Alan was saying, back in May, we and the announcement that we made, we were very much looking and making a statement on our liquidity position, where we had a 40 million average net burn that took us into the following year if conditions remained unchanged. But we're now in the recovery phase, and I think the one thing that we've seen as we've managed through COVID, it has been an incredibly dynamic environment. And as Alan said, that the equity raise today and the restructuring that we can now see in terms of how we need to right-size our business in that recovery phase and beyond is an important part of how we're going to accelerate through that recovery, how we're going to restore our financial flexibility, and also how we're going to position for profitability in the future. So I think it's a very important step for us at this time.
One thing, Patrick, that's continues to be important for us. We're one of 3 airlines in the world that have investment grade rating. That allows us to borrow money at a lot cheaper rate than a lot of airlines out there. Southwest and Ryanair are the only 2 airlines in that category. and making sure that we are disciplined in our financial framework, that we have a strong balance sheet that allows us to borrow money into the future at very low interest rates and have accessibility to that. And as I said, the third phase of what we want to try and achieve here is get back to growth. We've gotten Airbus to agree to continue the terms of the A350s to allow us to do Project Sunrise. It is my every intent that when we can get Qantas back into flying, when we can turn the business around, that we will be doing Project Sunrise, and we need our financial strength in order for us to be able to afford and purchase those aircraft and take that great business opportunity. And that's all part of setting us up really well for the future. Next question.
Thank you. Your next question comes from Jamie Freed from Reuters. Please go ahead.
Hey, Jamie.
Hi. Just with the stand down, is there also any possibility you'll try to negotiate with unions around their EBA so that people could share workarounds and maybe work less and get paid less but still work a bit? And then just also to clarify earlier, is it right that you said July next year is when you expect the first international flights?
Sorry, the second part of your question I missed, Jamie.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify some of your earlier comments. Did you say that July next year is when you see international restarting?
Yeah, so the first part, we're working through, every group is different, and there may be some opportunities for us to work on sharing hours that we need to negotiate with the unions. For example, as we start up international again, we're not going to be able to put all of the aircraft back in the air simultaneously. Our intent is to put the 787s back and the 330s back. They're the smaller aircraft. We're parking the A380s for at least 3 years, because they don't have any use, we think, during this period of time. And what we're talking to the union about is what's the mechanism that as you activate the fleet, that work could be shared. It means less hours for a lot of people, but it gets more people into flying again. So they're all parts of the dialogue about how we implement that, which I think is key. The reason why we've done it the way we have is that we're very clear the 6,000 jobs, and it was a hard decision. The 6,000 jobs are jobs that we don't see coming back for a long time, and it's only fair to the people that are involved in those areas that we offer them the redundancy, that we give them certainty so they can go out and get other jobs. And we will be spending around $600 million in redundancies. The redundancy arrangements in Qantas have been and always will be very attractive, and I think that's fair to those individuals. The stand down, we're trying our best to get JobKeeper and another forum to help them, and we do need those people. There are jobs for them in the future, and we do want them to get back, and how we get them back to work is really a discussion with the unions. And on your, we are taking a view on international. Given how successful, we're very optimistic about the Australian position. And as you know, our profitability has been in the past driven by domestic and our loyalty program, which is doing really well. But international, we have to be realistic about it and saying with what's happening in the rest of the globe, it is probably an extended period of time before we'll open up those borders. We're keeping ourselves ready. We can always activate the 787s and the 330s if the market opens up earlier. But for the purpose of this plan, we are working on international operations not starting in any real size. We might get the Trans-Tasman before then. We may get other nations opening up with bubbles, but to real size from July of next year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Thank you. Once again, if you wish to ask a question, please press *1 on your telephone. Angus Whitley from Bloomberg News. Please go ahead.
Oh, hi, Alan. Actually, you answered my first question on what changed your mind already, but could you talk a bit about what the smaller Qantas will look like internationally? Like, which routes do you anticipate running fewer frequencies or scaling back completely? What's your vision there?
So I think, and I think everybody knows that there's optimism. At some stage we may be able to open a Trans-Tasman bubble. That operates mainly aircraft that are used for domestic 737s and A330s, but it is a massive market in volume. The New Zealanders are the second largest tourism group to come to Australia. Chinese were number one before COVID-19, and Australians are the largest tourism group to go to New Zealand. So this is really, really good for tourism in both countries, and we're hoping with the pent-up demand that we're seeing there for people to fly to destinations, that could generate some good volumes and potentially before July of next year, which we believe is potentially feasible. I should say the recent Jetstar sale that we did is a good indication of why we have confidence for domestic in New Zealand. Jetstar launched $19 airfares, 10,000 at that level, but a lot of attractive airfares are at another level. And they sold over 200,000 seats last week. Jetstar in a normal day would get maybe up to 10 bookings a minute. In a sale before COVID-19, 100 bookings in a minute. They got over 200 bookings a minute last week. There's huge demand out there once the borders open up and we can get people to travel in Australia. And that's why we're very keen for the borders to be open. We know it has to be done in the right way, but we're very keen and we're continuing talking to the States about how that will happen. The rest of international, the view is to try and open up our international network. If there's a vaccine, it may happen rapidly. If there's other ways of testing or treatment, it may happen a little bit slower. But our view is that we start with the smaller aircraft, the newest aircraft, the most capable aircraft, and establish our network as fast as possible. So the 787s have 230 seats on it. They're half the size of the A380s. So we'll operate them with frequency to LA, to New York, to Chicago, to London, to the markets in Asia when they open, and we can establish a very extensive network really fast. And then, unfortunately, it means because they are too big, the aircraft, and the economics are not as good as the 787s, the A380s have to remain on the ground for at least 3 years until we see those international volumes being brought back. And the A380s we announced today, we're writing down the value of them. The aircraft are being put into Mojave Desert because it's a better environment for the aircraft to be sitting there. The environment protects the aircraft a lot more, and we have the intention at the right time to reactivate them and come them back in. But that is a considerable amount of time away. So you'll see frequency and smaller aircraft and international, and the bigger aircraft occurring a lot later.
Thank you. Your next question comes from Lucas Beard from Australian Financial Review. Please go ahead.
Hey, Lucas.
Hey, Alan. I was just hoping that you might be able to elaborate on why you weren't able to wait for the results of Treasury's JobKeeper review before you'd make such drastic changes to your workforce, or even wait until some JobKeeper-like thing for aviation comes through from the government later on, and how those conversations about the future of JobKeeper around aviation being with government, are you confident something will come through soon on that front?
Yeah, Lucas. I mean, the reality is our position is our position, and irrespective of what happens on JobKeeper or an alternative mechanism, we don't have work for those employees, and that's unfortunate. We don't have work now. We'll eventually have work, but we have to make that decision and give people clarity on where that stands. And we think that's important. Our people have been asking, as we work through the size and shape of Qantas, in the town halls we do every week, they're continuously asking, give us certainty, let us know what's going to happen, and we needed to do that. We can't wait. And so that was important. We also have a window now of making a lot of the changes as the airline is starting up again. And we think that was important to do it at this stage and not to do it later. And we will continue to have the dialogue with the government. It is constructive. I think they know, and I think the Prime Minister, the Treasurer, has said there are some industries that are more affected by this than others, and the tail of those industries in terms of how long it will take for recovery is a lot longer than other industries. So they haven't made a call, but I think it does help for them to know the size of the Qantas issue, what we think is going to happen, to inform them on the decision that they're making on JobKeeper and alternative. I think this is a better way to do it in advance rather than after that when the decisions have been made. Next question.
Thank you. Your next question comes from Robin Ironside from The Australian. Please go ahead.
Hey, Robin.
Oh, hi, Mr. Joyce. Was it difficult for the board to convince you to stay on for the 3 more years? I'm just wondering how much personal pride was involved in that. And also, are you looking forward to getting a paycheck again?
Thanks, Robin. I mean, I'm very passionate about the Qantas brand and its people. And the last thing I wanted to do is leave when we're in the biggest crisis in our history. And I feel a dedication, as the entire management team does, to this great company and great brand. So we're committed to this. It's the right thing to do. It's the board wanted management stability. They wanted a CEO that had gone through a number of crises in the past. And of course, we know I've been here for the global financial crisis. I've been here when we had to ground the airline in 11 with the industrial action. We've been here in 13 when we had to do the biggest transformation in our history. So I think that experience and that knowledge for the whole team, and it's the same team that went through these crises, I think was key. The board really wanted to make sure that that was in place, and I was happy to commit to that because I do have a passion for Qantas and its people, and we want to get as many people back in jobs as we can. And I want Qantas to do sunrise one day so we can actually grow the numbers back and recover a lot of these jobs that are lost. And, you know, I think it's appropriate. I was very proud of the management team and the board staff for the last 3 months. Nobody's been taking a salary as we work through this. And I think that is appropriate. I think we're not probably the only company in the country has done something like that. We all felt we had to make a commitment, and I haven't seen the team work as hard as they have in those 3 months. And I think that's made me very proud of what they've done and what they've achieved. Next question.
Thank you. Your next question comes from Naseem Kadim from ABC News. Please go ahead.
Hi, Alan. Just following up on the other question about JobKeeper. I'm just wondering, what was his reception like in terms of your request to extend that to aviation workers? And more generally, did you discuss what would happen if there's a second wave of infections and what kind of support would be needed then?
So I think, you know, obviously the dialogue with the government, as we said, is being constructive. They recognise, and I think the Prime Minister and the Treasurer has said there are some industries that will have issues, and that's very clear, will be disproportionately impacted by this post-September. No decisions have been made, and it would be JobKeeper or some alternative form of support. We're not hung up on JobKeeper. It could be something different, and we're happy to work with the government, and we have good dialogue with the government and with the opposition, and our focus is really to help those people that are stood down for a long period of time. You know, that money goes to them. That money is determined to help them through this, and anything we can do to help the government formulate what that looks like and how it can benefit our people through this very tough time, I think is key.
We'll do one more question in the room before we wrap.
With the state border closures, how much has the continued closure factored into this decision today, and how are the discussions with the state and territory governments going in reopening as soon as possible?
So obviously we'd like the borders to be opened up as soon as possible, but we recognise that the management of COVID-19 has to be a priority for everybody. But we do think there's 1 million jobs dependent on the tourism industry. We know that while Qantas has this financial strength, has the bandwidth to get through, and the runway to get through to the end of 21, even if nothing happens. A lot of businesses don't. And those small tour operators, some of them, even the big hotel chains, need the certainty on this and the borders to open up. So we're continuing to encourage the states. We're continuing to ask them to try and get the borders to open. And as many borders over a period of time would be great, and the sooner the possible. So that dialogue continues to be constructive. I think everybody knows the big benefits starting the wheels of tourism, the benefits to the economy, the benefits to jobs are really important. And I'm hopeful we can get there and people can get confident to open up the borders as soon as possible. It means more of our people are back in the air. It means more of these small tour operators get Australians to use them. And I think that's really key to the recovery of the economy. And I'm not sure for a lot of these small companies how long they have. We have a long time. We could survive. I don't want to continue to burn through cash, and I'd rather it's faster, because it means we'll get to a faster stage of hiring people again when we get through this phase and get into recovery. So we still keep on calling on them to open up the borders and try and get there as soon as they can and as soon as they're comfortable.
Quickly, Mr. Joyce, you spoke about this financial year and what the board and what yourself and other executives took in terms of pay cuts.
Yeah.
Next financial year is only a few days away. What's the plan going forward?
So as I said, while we were in the position that the airline was still trying to establish an operation which won't be established in July, I will continue not to take salary in July. I've asked my colleagues to take a salary which will be 85% of what they had previously, and as you're aware, there's no annual bonuses being paid to the executives this year. So I think everybody is making a solid contribution to show their passion and their loyalty to the company.